All right, so I'm going to finish up the panel's comments before we get into the table discussions. So I'm just going to present this as kind of a case study at Brown, my previous institution, and maybe highlight some of the things that other panelists have talked about. So I became the inaugural chair at Brown in 2006, and about maybe 10 minutes after I signed my offer letter, they said, we have a problem here with women in the emergency medicine realm. There's both an internal and external review going on because of the low percentage of women and the women who are on the faculty and the residents. There's issues of probably I would say low-level harassment and a lot of disgruntled women. I said, thank you very much. So I didn't hear that during the recruitment phase. So I came in as a chair, and I had been an advocate for women based on my experiences growing up, where I had some tremendous women role models, and saw from my rural area where I grew up a lot of women who had potential, including my own mother, who was a valedictorian of her high school class, and unlike her brothers, did not have the opportunity to go to college. And I had a grandmother who was a matriarch, but also extremely bright woman, but never got beyond the farmer's wife level. And so I always was kind of rooting for women, and so it was natural for me to kind of take this on. And I did a listening tour. I listened to the women in the group, the few that were there, and tried to understand what the issues were. There were some changes already occurring. And then I basically tried to model and build the department based on some principles, and getting at what Jim Adams was talking about in terms of the integrity of the department and our leadership. And then it was that we would be fair, we would be equitable. And I think the equity part is very important. At Michigan, their Office of Diversity and Inclusion is diversity, equity, and inclusion. The equity part is really key. And then tried to be transparent as we were going forward as it related to how men and women were treated in the department. And there was a clear goal to increase the percentage of women faculty because we didn't have enough. And so it was then over the next couple years to walk the talk in terms of recruitment, promotion of women, and putting women in leadership positions where we could and when they were ready. And I think that worked. We started to be able to recruit women, and I made choices. There were times when I had equally qualified men and women with a limited number of positions, and I picked the woman because we needed to have a higher percentage of women faculty. And those were the decisions that were made. And then we had a women's group that formed and had faculty, fellows, and residents in it. A lot of mentoring of women by myself, but also within that women's group. And then we actually created a division that eventually became known as the Division of Sex and Gender. It started out as women's health and emergency medicine. And the division director was a woman for that. And so we tried to walk the talk in terms of what we were doing in the department. And it worked. We increased quite rapidly the number of women in the department. We eliminated those behaviors that were not tolerable to women, and tried to promote a culture that was, I think, more equitable, more just, and move forward. It did require some re-listening along the way. In the 12 years that I was there, as the women matured in their roles, I was a little behind on where their needs and interests were. And so about halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through my tenure there, the women asked if they could meet with me again, and we would meet a couple times a year as a women's group with the chair. But they said, we're not feeling supported toward as much as we'd like toward promotion and toward leadership development, leadership opportunities. And it was a time for me to say, yeah, I think you're right. I'm viewing you more as junior faculty, and you're kind of rising up to the level where you need something different. So being able to have that discussion in a very open and helpful way was a good thing. And then we revised and evolved with the way we were offering some things for women in faculty development. And then I think a consequence of this was that because women were feeling comfortable in our department, the LGBTQ folks also gravitated to our department, and we increased quite a bit people who felt comfortable coming in as gay or lesbian faculty members in particular to be part of our group because we had this kind of inclusive type approach to faculty. In the racial and ethnic realm, we did not have as much success, and I'm really interested in Adrian's comments and how we talk about this. One of our promising African-American women faculty ended up going to Adrian's shop, but then because of family reasons ended up leaving. And so it is this smaller pool of people, and Providence was not particularly great with the professional opportunities for people of color, and it was hard. We would find that we would lose people to New York, Washington, or Atlanta. If you're on the East Coast, I think that's a familiar refrain that especially African American faculty candidates will probably feel more welcome and like they might have better opportunities if they want to meet a potential spouse in those cities than they would in Providence. And so I think there are a lot of issues here, but it just gives you a little bit of a sense of what you can do if you open your mind and just try to do decent, fair, equitable things and listen to people. You can make changes over a decade, which we did at Brown. So thanks.